So now it's a lecture of we talked about how to pronounce his name. He is a French composer, and so his name is Simon Kaplan, and he lives in America. His name is Simon Kaplan. Here in Salzburg, we would say Simon Kaplan. So, well, he's United States based, so Simon Kaplan, a French composer, music theorist, and instructor. His oeuvre, I don't know how to pronounce in English, oeuvre, I say oeuvre. Encompasses a diverse range of solo, chamber, and orchestral works, which have been premiered by esteemed performers across Europe. He presently serves at the University of North Texas and as a teaching assistant and teaching fellow. 2021, he invented the Diahemitonic system, a pioneer quarter-tonal composition system. And in 2024, he invented the Kaplanophone. A quarter-tonal virtual keyboard instrument with an inharmonic timbre, playable via a pair of MIDI controllers equipped with propellers. His article on Diahemitonic Modality has been published in Tempo by Cambridge University Press. He got his master's degree in composition from the Royal Flemish Conservatoire of Brussels in 2022, where he studied under Peter Swinnen. And then Brussels in the Royal Conservatoire of Mons. Claude Ledoux. Currently, he is pursuing doctoral studies in composition at the University of North Texas, and he expects to receive his PD in 2 years. And nice to you.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here with you today. So today I'm going to lecture on my diahemitonic system, which is a system of composition based on the quarter-tone scale. So we're talking about 24 tone equal temperament, 24 equal divisions of the octave, or 24 equal divisions of the second harmonic, which basically means the same thing. Some of my predecessors to have worked with quarter-tone intervals are the Russian Ivan Vishnegradsky and the Czech Alois Haba in Europe, and in America, Charles Ives. I could also have mentioned Julian Carrillo in Mexico. And among all the systems of composition, many of them are not idiomatic, like serialism or set theory. Indeed, you can compose serial music or set theory music with any scale you want. But a very idiomatic system for the 12th tone scale, the scale that is the only one not to be considered microtonal, although it is diatonic modality. Diatonic modality includes the diatonic scale, melodic modes, consonance-based harmony, chordal cadences, but also metric structures and rhythmic proportions, which, as I will show you, are related to the harmonic ratios that give rise to the frequencies used in diatonic music. So this lecture will be focused on pitch and duration, leaving the other parameters to the expressivity of the artist. Let's start with pitch. So we'll start with the chromatic scale, the equally tempered scale, so a scale in which each step size equals the greatest common factor of all its constituent intervals, which is an octave repeating scale. So I'm just talking about the standard 12-tone scale. You take the harmonics 2 and 3 among the harmonics of the harmonic series, 2 is an octave of the fundamental, 3 is a prime number. It generates the circle of fifths. And via the circle of fifths, you get the semitone scale. This is probably what we all know here. This is called the cyclic principle. And I will show you that it is the same principle that is used to generate the quarter-tone scale. It's not someone who woke up one morning and said, let's split a semitone in two and we'll get two quarter tones. It's also an acoustic principle. So this time we'll take the harmonics 8 and 11. 8 is also an octave of the fundamental. 11 is also a prime number. And this generates the circle of major force. If there is any music theory teacher here, he or she should scream, because normally there is nothing but perfect force or diminished or augmented. It's a term coined by Ivan Vishnegradsky, the major force. It's a perfect force plus a quarter tone. So we could also call it a semi-augmented force. And it gives acoustically rise to the quarter tone scale. Now, if we want to derive a white key scale and a black key scale from the quarter tone scale, we need to see how it works with diatonicism. So the diatonic scale is the white key row on the piano, and the pentatonic scale is the black key row. In the diatonic system, let's use the interval that gives rise to the 12-tone scale, the perfect fifth. From C, it gives you CG, and from the octave up but going downward, it gives you CF. If you mix everything, you get CFGC. So CG, we know what that is. It's the perfect fifth. CF, it's also the perfect fifth, but downwards. CC, we also know what it is. It's the octave. But what is FG? And the Pythagoreans, they call it the tonos. In English, the tone. If you use this tone and you go through the two perfect fourths that it separates, it will give you the diatonic scale. C plus a tone D plus a tone E. Then you cannot add one more tone before reaching F. The Greeks were calling it the lima, which means what remains. Then you start again from G plus a tone A plus a tone B. You cannot add anything anymore, there is the lima, you get C. So you have two identical tetrachords, and that's why it's called the diatonic scale. It's from the ancient Greek diatonikos, meaning of tones passed through the tetrachords. The first note of the first tetrachord is the tonic, the first note of the second tetrachord is the dominant. Now, what do we see? We see that the diatonic scale contains 7 pitch classes, which is half of the chromatic scale plus 1, and the pentatonic scale contains 5 pitch classes, which is half of the chromatic scale minus 1. And 5 and 7 constitute a pair of twin primes, so two prime numbers separated by 2. 5 and 7 are both prime numbers, and they are separated by 2, so they constitute a pair of twin primes. What is interesting is that in integer notation, 0,7 modulo 12 is a perfect fifth, and 0,5 modulo 12 is a perfect fourth, which is the inversion of the perfect fifth. Pentatonic comes from the ancient Greek pentatonikos, meaning of 5 tones. Now we will do the same with the interval that gave rise to the quarter tone scale, so the major fourth. So from C, it's C, F quarter tone sharp, and from the above C, C, G quarter tone flat, going downward. If you mix everything, you have C, F quarter tone sharp, G quarter tone flat, C. C, F quarter tone sharp, we know what that is, it's the major fourth. C, G quarter tone flat, we also know what that is, it's the same major fourth but downward. C, C is the octave, the quarter tone scale is also an octave repeating scale, so we know what that is. Now, what is the interval between F sharp and, F quarter tone sharp and G quarter tone flat is, according to the Greek terminology, what should be called the hemitonos, a semitone in English. So I will use this semitone to go through the two major fours that it separates, and it will give rise to a scale made of two heptachords, starting with C, C plus a semitone C sharp, plus a semitone D, plus a semitone D sharp, E, F. We cannot add one more semitone, there is the lemma reaching the F quarter-tone sharp, and then we start again from G quarter-tone flat, plus a semitone G quarter-tone sharp, A quarter-tone flat, A quarter-tone sharp, B quarter-tone flat, B quarter-tone sharp, and C again after the lemma. And it sounds the meaning, I called it diahemitonic from the ancient Greek diahemitonikos, meaning of semitones passed through the heptachords. The first note of the first heptachord is the tonic. The first note of the second heptachord is the dominant. This is how it sounds. What is interesting is that the same scale was discovered empirically by Vishnegradsky and algorithmically by Frank Jędrzejewski, who participated to the symposium. And this method is the acoustic method to reach the same result. So with three results when trying to establish a white key scale from the Quarter-Tonal environment, it always gives you this scale. Now it becomes interesting when we know that the diahemitonic scale contains 13 pitch classes, which is half of the quarter-tones plus 1. And the hendecatonic scale from the ancient Greek hendekatonikos, meaning of 11 tones, 11 pitch classes, which is half of the pitch classes contained in the quarter-tone scale, minus 1. And it also constitutes a pair of twin primes, and it is the next pair of twin primes in the series of pairs of twin primes. And moreover, 013 modulo 24 corresponds to the minor fifth, which is the inversion of the major fourth, and 011 modulo 24 corresponds to the major fourth. So we have the same parallel than with the diatonic entity. Now that we have the scale, the white key scale, we can establish the modes. So what is a mode? It's the configuration of the white key scale once the tonic is defined. Modes with wide intervals may be said to sound bright, while modes with narrow intervals may be said to sound dark. It's always difficult to put words on oral feelings. That's why Gustav Mahler said, if what I have to tell you, I could tell it to you with words, I wouldn't bother myself to compose music. However, in the context of a lecture, I have to find some words to illustrate the sound. So instead of saying happy and sad, which is really blurred, knowing that the saddest piece by Schubert are probably the ones in the major mode, I prefer to say bright and dark. We more or less agree on that. If we take the C diatonic mode, wherever it is located in the hierarchy of the diatonic modes, we already know that by inverting it, the resulting mode will be located at the opposite end of the hierarchy. And the opposite mode is the E diatonic mode. The Phrygian mode, when read downwards, has the same intervallic pattern as the Ionian mode when read upward. And in between C and E, you have D. And the D diatonic mode, the Dorian mode, is perfectly symmetric, as you can see. So it stands at the midpoint of the hierarchy. This is the hierarchy of the diatonic modes. If you start from the top mode, the F mode, which is the Lydian mode, is the brightest one. And when you follow the circle of fifths going downwards until reaching the Locrian mode, which is the darkest one, you lose one semitone each time. And indeed, we can see that the Ionian mode and the Phrygian mode are symmetric, and the axis of symmetry is the Dorian mode. Now let's do the same thing with our diahemitonic scale. This is the C diahemitonic mode. Wherever it is located in the hierarchy of the diahemitonic modes, the inversion of this mode must be located at the opposite end of the hierarchy. And that mode is the F diahemitonic mode, which has exactly the same intervallic pattern but downwards. And between F and C, you have a quarter tone flat, and this mode is perfectly symmetric. So this mode stands at the midpoint of the hierarchy. And this is, I know it's a little bit small, but this is the hierarchy of the diahemitonic modes. At the top you have the brightest one, the F quarter-tone sharp diahemitonic mode, and when you follow the circle of major force going down until the B quarter-tone sharp diahemitonic mode, you lose one quarter tone each time. And indeed we can see that the A quarter-tone flat diahemitonic mode is at the midpoint of the hierarchy, acting as an axis of symmetry, and we recognize the C and F modes being symmetrical. As with the diatonic modes, the lowest mode, the darkest one, has a tritone between the tonic and the dominant. You see, in diatonic modality, the D mode has a tritone between B and F, and in diahemitonic modality, the B quarter-tone sharp mode has a tritone between B quarter-tone sharp and F quarter-tone sharp. Now that we're done with melody, it's time to get into harmony. So what is a chord? It's a set of pitched notes whose emission is simultaneous. We have the major perfect chord from the harmonic series and the minor perfect chord from the subharmonic series. Here, in the harmonic series, let's take the 4th and 6th harmonics, which are just the octaves of the 2nd and 3rd that gave rise to the diatonic scale. If we trace a ray between them, it also includes the 5th harmonics. We have 4, 5, 6. This gives rise to the major triad that we all learn in first year of music theory. This is called the radial principle. It's not the cyclic principle, it's the radial principle. You trace a ray through the harmonic series instead of making a circle of a harmonic interval. When we locate the major triad within the diatonic scale, we can notice two interlaced patterns: C, D, E, F, G, A, etc. Right? This is the triadic scale, so when you build triads on every degree of the diatonic scale. This is the minor triad, so it's also 4, 5, 6, but from the subharmonic series. And in the triadic scale, you have 3 chords that are major, 3 chords that are minor, and 1 chord that is diminished. Now, if we go back to the harmonic series, our harmonics are 8 and 11, right? So we need to trace a ray between 8 and 11. So that we include also 9 and 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it gives us the major tetrad, what I call the major tetrad, because the perfect major chord contains 4 tones. It sounds like this. If we locate it within the diahemitonic scale, we also notice these 2 interlaced patterns: C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F quarter-tone sharp, G quarter-tone flat. Same system, same pattern. This is the tetradic scale. Of course, it's written in diatonic notation, so it's much more cumbersome than if there were a diahemitonic notation. So you have all the tetrads built on each degree of the diahemitonic scale. And this is the minor tetrad, so 8, 9, 10, 11, but from the subharmonic series. Much darker than the major one, remember? Now we have 4 tetrads that are major, 4 tetrads that are minor, but also 4 tetrads that are neutral. Why neutral? Because since you have 4 notes, you have 3 intervals. In diatonic modality, either it is major minor or minor major, so you don't have neutral. But here, the major tetrad is major major minor, and the minor tetrad is minor major major. But you can also have major minor major, which is perfectly symmetric. So neutral, plus an augmented tetrad. I let you find it. I give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, one is this one. Is this one. You see only tones, only whole tone. This one is augmented because it's not a major force, it's an augmented force. So it's an augmented tetrad. Now that we have the chord, so we already have 13 modes instead of 7, so 13 colors of the rainbow rather than 7. We have 3 types of perfect chords, not only 2. You will also see that we have more types of cadences, because now that we explored the chords, we'll explore the cadences. A cadence, which comes from Latin cadencia, to fall, is the fall from a chord to another at the end of a phrase. In diatonic modality, it comes from the true clause, the clausula vera, which resolves dyadically onto the octave by conjunct contrary motion. Later on, a third part was added, which resolved conjunctly upwards onto the fifth, conjunctly downwards onto the third, or even split to resolve onto both by conjunct contrary motion. Said differently, and in an easier way, it's a last degree triad in first inversion, moving to a first degree triad in root position. So these are the cadences that we know, the modal cadences in diatonic modality. Ionian cadence, Dorian-Aeolian cadence, Phrygian cadence, Lydian cadence, Mixolydian cadence, and Locrian cadence. Now if we do the same with our diahemitonic system, it should be a last degree tetrad in first inversion, progressing towards a first degree tetrad in root position. And it gives us much more possibilities. I will make you listen to all of them, and each of them has only one quarter tone of difference. So open your ears carefully, please. Subtleties and possibilities in terms of cadencing. Now, I could have stopped the lecture here, but it would be a mistake. Why? Because microtonality teaches us that when you change the scale, you should change time as well. That's why I need to go into duration. The harmonic is a periodic frequency, which means it's a rhythm. Have you tried this? You take an E flat, you play it 440 times per second via a software on your computer, and it will sound A440. Or have you already have the occasion to listen to an octobass or even a contrabassum, very, very low? You can hear the tick, 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 tick. It's a rhythm. So if you change the pitch management system, you need to change the duration management system as well. I'm not the first one to say it. Henry Cowell said it, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen said it, and many other people that are, by the way, quoted in the book by Frank Etchejewski also mentioned that. So it's important to take that into account. Duration is intrinsically connected to pitch. And when this harmonic, which is a periodic frequency, so a rhythm, oscillates in simultaneity with others, the coincidence of the sinusoidal starting points is noticed at regular intervals. So it's also a meter. So, what is a meter? It's a regular cycle of beats, the first of which is strong and the following weak. In diatonic modality, we have the duple meter in perfect time and the triple meter, perfect time, 2 and 3. Like the 2 and second and third harmonics used to generate the semitone scale. The proportion that allows the metric modulation from the one into the other is called the sesquialtera proportion, from the Latin sesquialter, meaning in the ratio of 1.5 elements to the other. So we will use the octuple meter as the imperfect time and the undecouple meter as the perfect time, because we need to base our rhythmic system on 8 and 11. And the proportion that allows the metric modulation from the one into the other, I call it the octans de sesquialtera proportion, which is also from the Latin octans de sesquialter, meaning in the ratio of 1 3/8 elements to the other. So basically we have measures that have 8 or 11 bits. Now if we go at the lower level, the level of bit subdivision, which is the operation by which the bit is split into equal parts and qualified according to its arity. In diatonic modality, you have binary bit subdivisions, the minor prolation, and ternary bit subdivisions, the major prolation. The tool that helps you to convert the one into the other is called the hemiola, from the ancient Greek hemiolios, meaning in the ratio of the whole and a half to the whole. So us will use octonary bit subdivisions as the minor prolation and undenary bit subdivisions as the major prolation. And the tool that we're going to use to convert the one into the other, I call it the triogdola, from the ancient Greek triogdolios, meaning in the ratio of the whole and 3/8 to the whole. So 8-based and 11-based subdivisions of the beat. Now, if some of you are a bit familiar with medieval music, you have probably heard of the rhythmic modes and the ordines. So what is a rhythmic mode? It's a rhythmic pattern. The ordo is formed by its expression in a phrase, and it indicates the number of its consecutive statements before arrests. Most of the rhythmic modes of the Notre Dame school in Paris in the 12th and 13th century in France, they were thought to be derived from classical Greco-Latin poetry. But I will show you an acoustic way to derive exactly the same modes. This is the harmonic series, but converted rhythmically. It's the rhythm converted harmonic series. You can see the same proportions. If we take the second and third harmonics, the harmonics that are used to generate the 12-tone scale, the diatonic scale as well, and you superimpose them, you get a 3 against 2, which gives you the two primary modes of the Notre Dame school. 2 plus 1, 1 plus 2. These are the first two ternary rhythmic modes. Now, an ordo begins and ends with a note of the same values. So there are two types of ordines, perfect ordines, imperfect ordines. A perfect ordo starts on the beat, just like this. And an imperfect ordo starts on a weak part of the beat, like that. Much more groovy. You can add other modes via the alternation of a 1-beat note value and one of the first two ternary rhythmic modes, or the succession of 1-beat note values. These two are called extra mensuram, so beyond measure, because they are longer than 1 beat. You can also operate the fusion of the first two ternary rhythmic modes, which will result in a triplet. The composite rhythmic modes, they are perfect ordines begin and end on the strong beat with their first rhythmic cell. Their imperfect ordines begin and end on a weak beat with their second rhythmic cell. And the successive 1-beat note value rhythmic mode, its perfect ordo begins and ends on the strong beat, its imperfect ordo begins and ends on a weak beat. This is the same harmonic series, but this time selecting the 8th and 11th harmonics, the ones that are involved in the production of the Quarter-Tonal scale and the Diahemitonic scale. By superimposing them, we get much more primary modes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 primary modes, all of them being a result of 11. These are the 8 primary modes and denary rhythmic mode. So 8 plus 3, 5 plus 6, 2 plus 8 plus 1, 7 plus 4, 4 plus 7, 1 plus 8 plus 2, 6 plus 5, 3 plus 8. These are the perfect ordinates they form when starting on the strong part of the beat. And these are the imperfect ordinates they form when starting on the weak part of the beat. You can also add the alternation of a 1-bit note value and one of the first 8 undeniary rhythmic modes, or the succession of 1-bit note values, both of them being beyond measure, more than 1 bit, extra mensuram, or the fusion of the first 8 undeniary rhythmic modes, which will result in an undecouplet. Now you have noticed that all these modes, they're undeniary. The diatonic modes are ternary, the diahemitonic modes are undeniary. What about the rhythm in minor prolation, binary rhythm in diatonic modality, octonary rhythm in diahemitonic modality? Those are never configured modally. Let's say they are free. Yes, you can imagine that the binary rhythm is just let's take a beat and split it in two, but music is not a fruit. You don't just split a beat in two like this. There is a process. So the hemiola will explain us how to reach that result. It will convert 2 times 3 into 3 times 2, so the major prolation becomes a minor prolation. As you can see, it's not 2 plus 1, 1 plus 2. Now it's 2, 1 plus 1, 2. And this 1 plus 1 in the middle of the hemiola gives rise to the binary rhythm. Now let's do the same thing with the triangulus, which will convert 8 times 11 into 11 times 8. So it will also convert a major prolation into a minor prolation. So this time it's not 8 plus 3, 5 plus 6, 2 plus 8 plus 1, resulting in 11. We are looking for those resulting in 8. So I have 3 plus 5, 6 plus 2, 1 plus 7, 4 plus 4, etc. And then we don't have only one octonary rhythm, but we have 7 kinds of the octonary rhythm. So again, we have more diversity for the same type of rhythm. There is only one kind of binary rhythm, already 7 kinds of octonary rhythm, but there is more. If you merge those that have as the shortest note value a quarter of a beat, you get the quadruplet. And if you merge those that have as the shortest note value an eighth of a beat, you have the octuplet. So you have 9 kinds of the octonary rhythm in total. And finally, to finish,
Right.
ornaments. Most ornaments are just played as fast as possible, right? Except one, the appoggiatura. The appoggiatura is an ornamental note which delays the emission of the main note and resolves onto it by conjunct motion, and it has a fixed length. Sorry. So, according to Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach and Joachim Quantz, in a double meter, the diatonic appoggiatura should represent 1 bit. So 1 bit of appoggiatura, 1 bit of resolution, half-half. This is the octave ratio, and the diatonic scale is an octave repeating scale. This comes from the median pair of note values of the hemiola, 1 plus 1. Same, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach and Joachim Quantz say that in a triple meter, the diatonic appoggiatura should last 2 beats. 2 beats of appoggiatura, 1 bit of resolution. This 3-to-2 ratio corresponds to the perfect fifth ratio that gives rise to the semitone scale and the diatonic scale. And it corresponds to the first ternary rhythmic mode, the first pair of note values of the first ternary rhythmic mode. So now if we look into the median pair of note values of the triangulus, we see 4 plus 4. So the diahemitonic appoggiatura in octuple meter should have 4 beats of appoggiatura, 4 beats of resolution, which contains the octave ratio, 50-50, because the quarter-tone scale is also an octave repeating scale. And now if we take the pair of note values of the first undeniary rhythmic mode, 8 plus 3, it gives us the diahemitonic appoggiatura in undecoupled meter. 8 plus 3, 8 bits of appoggiatura, 3 bits of resolution, 11 to 8 being the ratio of the major force. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm still here.
Brilliant lecture, and of course I presume there are many questions. Will be to extraordinary good.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Do you have some audio examples to listen to the appoggiatura and that stuff? Like, can we hear it?
The appoggiatura?
In the computers, like sound bits, sound bites.
I can make you listen to some excerpts. You want monophonic examples or polyphonic examples?
I have no internet on the... actually, yes, I have
You
internet
have?
from here. Okay, yes, I have
So if you
internet.
want, I can make you listen. If you want a monophonic example, we can listen to my clarinet sonata.
Thank you. I always reject everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
My apologies.
Das kennen wir so noch.
That's not my sonata.
This one. Looks like Marbella.
This is how it sounds.
Could you play it again? I guess C, it's mostly in clarinet. Is the same as that?
Yeah. It's written in transpose.
Different notes.
It's transpose one tone lower. Yeah. So does it answer your Any other questions?
Yes, we have 5 minutes for questions still.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Oh,
5
that's
minutes
another
for
question.
questions.
I was going to ask what the implications of this are for composers, because it can, it's wonderfully clear, but it can seem quite abstract. So you've now demonstrated to us a possible, just how it can work within your music. Is this clarinet sonata, is it very systematic in the way it goes? This example here looks quite systematic.
It uses the system, but artistically, so it's exactly the same as diatonic modality. You have Josquin-Després who will use it a certain way, Palestrina will use it a different way, Cavalli will use it a different way, Bach will use it a different way. It's just a system, it's a grammar, it's a language, so you can use my system in a completely different way than me.
Yeah. But the thing that's so interesting about it is the 2 to 3 ratio. That's very pure and simple. And the 8 to 11 is one of the most weird.
Yes.
And maybe the 8 to 11 is so weird because you're trying to find a way to get between the two chromatic scales within 24.
It's just going higher in the harmonic series.
Well, yeah, sure, but it's going a lot higher, isn't it? So the differences between the two ratios.
Yes,
Very
but
different.
remember that between the era of diatonic modality and now, human being went to the moon. So in music we can do the same as well. We can abandon the planet 2 plus 3 and go to the planet 811. We are ready for that.
Sure. But I mean, there's other planets in between, you know, 4 to 5, 5 to 7.
Actually, this relates to what I would call the matryoshka system. You know, the Russian dolls inside each other. The 7th harmonic goes actually with the 13th. So it's actually higher because the 7th harmonic gives you the octave divided in 5, and the 13th harmonic gives you the octave divided in 10. So they go together. But the quarter-tone scale, the 11th harmonic, goes with the semitone scale, the 3rd harmonic, goes with the whole tone scale, the 9th harmonic, and goes with the double tone scale, the 5th harmonic. So all of them are one doll subdivided more and more. Right?
So the 11th, there's a new dimension in music, I think, when you started. As atonality can be founded in this kind of music where there is no fifth and no third. There is no interval that we are accustomed to by nature tones and even by 12th Edo. So it's completely different, but it sounds accustomed to me.
Yeah.
Hi, that was very interesting. What?
He got gazumped.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Oh,
please
sorry.
go,
sorry. I'm wondering about the generation of the chord, the 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yes.
So you're talking about how the 8 to 11 is like parallel to 2 to 3 all the time. But then you go to the major chord, and that's 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Because there is nothing between 2 and 3.
Right.
So they had to use the octaves of it. So instead of 2 and 3, they used 4 and 6 to get the 5 in between, which is part of the scale. But you don't need to do that with the diahemitonic scale.
That seems like the logic's going backwards, though. Right? Like, you're like...
That also explains why they have 4/4 in metric, which is just two measures of 2/4, basically. They need to double the intervals to get this major chord. Yes.
Can I ask who's the who you're talking about there? Because you keep referring as these people are doing a thing. I don't know that these
let's
people
say
are not
from
just you. Right?
from Leona to Bach, I would say.
But sorry, so Bach is constructing his system out of the overtone series. Is that what you're saying?
He's ending the modal era.
So it seems.
After that is the tonal era that he started.
So Bach's not tonal composer.
He's in between.
Well,
He's not completely tonal yet, but he's not completely modal anymore. He's the junction between the two.
you keep mentioning these people, these great composers,
Mm-hmm.
from whom we have no writings, constructing things and doing things in the system you've created.
Oh, we have writings from Zarlino, for example.
Yeah, I know who Zarlino is, but we don't have writings from Bach. We don't have writings from Josquin de Prez. And that you attribute...
We have writings from Rameau who explain the tonal system.
I know, but you're attributing to these people a system of creation of the diatonic scale. Why? I don't understand.
That's the way it was created, and that's the way it was taught from
How do you know?
generation to generation,
How do you
from
know?
the Pythagoreans, from the treatises. The treatises that they learned. And the first treatise on the harmonic series relating to harmony is 1722 by Rameau, much before Bach.
Not much before Bach, they're the same time.
Let's say it was still in his modal era, before the last prelude and fugues by Bach. He was alive, but he was young.
I think you're putting the cart before the horse. You've got a theory of how these things are generated, and then you're imagining, because there are these systems, because there's a well-formed scale essentially in diatonic music, you're imagining that therefore it's created by these people in the same way that you have it in your brain. But your method is deeply modern. It's a deeply modern method of approach. It's not, this isn't
Yes, it was even built descendingly originally by the Greeks. The diatonic scale was built descendingly.
Yeah,
It's not the friction mode, so it's after that they. I cannot do 3 hours on a history of the diatonic scale, so I had to make.
Did not discuss things in the way you're discussing.
I'm really sorry to interrupt this discussion, but I believe we're going to have time before the opera. We can discuss this topic after the lesson, so we don't take time from Ryan because we are now 3 minutes late. I think it's not you are. Sorry. Yes. So yeah, it's even. Yeah, that's the reason. Okay.
Sorry for your question. Maybe we will try another time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my presentation about Kaplan Lamb's Curva Triangulus. In my presentation, I want to give an overview of the things I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to start by introducing Lamb's composition as if I were presenting a concert notes for an audience, and then I'll introduce some technical aspects of talking about just intonation music more generally, and finally, I will apply this technical style of analysis to Lamb's music. This technical analytical style is something that I'm continuing from my work on Ben Jonson's 7th String Quartet that appeared in the Music Theory Spectrum last year. I'll give an overview of my analytical methodology during this presentation before applying it to Lamb. To presage what I find later, and to give some orientation for what I'm going to say, Lamb's style of writing in the Curva Triangulus might aptly be described as ascetic. Unlike the drifting motions of Johnston's quartet, Lamb's music shifts from place to place, but tends to oscillate back to its starting point. But the main topic of this presentation is that Lamb's Curva Triangulus works as a kind of intermixed music historical document. And to orientate that discussion for later as well, I'll be arguing that Lamb's music invites comparisons with Renaissance music, as well as recent trends in contemporary classical music. Lamb overtly states her interest in reawakening sounds of the past in her liner notes to the piece, but I also find something of the new simplicity style in her music making, at once in the orbit of John Dowland's Lacrimae, and at the same time in the orbit of Jörg Frei's Longing Landscapes. I will come to the historically intermixed reading of Lamb's composition at the end of this talk, but I wanted to broach these questions so that you can think about them as I'm discussing more technical matters of the composition. So, with these preliminaries out the way, let me begin with this presentation. Kaplan Lamb is an American composer who was born in 1982 and lives in Berlin. She works in the just intonation tradition of Harry Partch and James Tenney. She studied with Tenney in the California Institute of the Arts, and at the moment she writes music to the sacred realism level and plays with the Harmonic Space Orchestra. Today I'm going to talk about Kaplan Lamb's Curva Triangulus, which is from 2018 but was revised in 2021. The recently published recording of Curva Triangulus was performed by Ensemble Proton and appeared in 2024. The work is for alto flute, English horn, clarinet d'amore, bassoon, cello, archi organo, and Barberini triple harp. Each instrument, through scordatura and tuning, plays musical pitches only in just intonation. And I will soon clarify the tuning of the various instruments, but I think it's first worth listening to a minute or so of the composition to get a sense for how it sounds. Very luxuriant, beautiful music, and the recording is absolutely super. It's fantastic. Within these opening remarks on the Curva-Triangulus are a few unusual details. Who were Tenney and Parch, and what is Lamb's relationship to them? What are the archiorgano and the Barberini triple harp? As well as what is the system of tuning that Lamb's using anyway? And before I go into detail about Curva-Triangulus, I want to answer each of those questions in turn. James Tenney, who taught Lamb at the California Institute of the Arts, and doesn't really need an introduction here, but I'm going to do it anyway, was a musical Renaissance man. As a composer, he studied with Edgar Varese, John Cage and Harry Parch, and he was educated in piano by Eduard Steuermann. He was also a teacher and scholar, and is posthumously rather influential in North American composition, I would say. In musical tuning, he researched crystal grove structures, and he also wrote a book on the history of consonance and musical dissonance. I want to highlight Tenney's education with Harry Parch. Parch was one of the most unusual figures in the American avant-garde. After he left his studies at the University of South California, Parch followed self-directed education. His influence on musical tuning in North America can hardly be overstated. From Ben Johnston, Tenney and Lou Harrison to the music theorist Irv Wilson, Parch has widely influenced our field. His book, Genesis of the Music, from 1948, revised in 1979, is a milestone in the literature on musical tuning, in particular just intonation. He himself was influenced by the German theorist Hermann von Helmholtz's Die Lehre von der Tonempfindung from 1863, though Parch came to know it as On the Sensation of Tones, translated by Alexander Ellis in 1875. In response to the perceptual purity of just intervals, Parch's system aims to give a systematic expression to just intonation. The influence on Lamb can be traced from Helmholtz to Parch to Tenney and then to Herb. I will not explain just intonation in this forum, since I think we're all fairly well versed in the matter, but I think what you might not be aware of is the archiorgano and the Barberini triple harp. The archiorgano is an organ with 36 pitches per octave on 2 manuals. It was developed in Basel through the Studio 31 project, and the tuning is based on Nicola Vincentino's design. The organ uses the quarter-comma mean tone tuning from G flat to A sharp, with keys to distinguish between enharmonic neighbour tones. For example, there are keys to differentiate between B sharp and C. In this extended quarter-comma mean tone, there's a very good approximation of 7 to 4, just 7, and in this way the organ can play all the pitches called for in Curva-Triangulus. The Barberini triple harp is a historic harp with 3 levels of strings by which it can play a chromatic scale. Although it is unclear when the Barberini triple harp was actually first developed, it's an important object in musical history, particularly in historically informed performance practice. The harp was most likely commissioned by Antonio Barberini, the nephew of Pope Urban VIII, and the original harp is in the Museo Nazionale degli Strumenti Musicali in Rome. And in Curva-Triangulus, Lamb uses a scordatura for the chromatic pitches in just intonation. And together with the archiorgano, the Barberini triple harp produces a historical atmosphere. And on this, Lamb says in her CD liner notes, "I was foraging somewhere between being a bad student of Zarlino, some fleeting moments of Mark Giuseppe Zarlino actually seem to appear, as well as some kind of precursor to Rameau's sounding body epiphany. That is, Lamb intends to awaken an antique sound world with this work, not only in musical tuning, but also through musical organisation and instrumentation." Finally, I'll talk a little bit about the concept behind Curva-Triangulus and the method of its composition. The title is inspired by the artist Bridget Riley. Lamb says, "The title was inspired by some recent works of Bridget Riley's following an earlier thread, particularly from Tremor 1962, a plane with triangles warped by one-directional sides of curved lines." And what you can see here is Lamb has drawn the album cover for the Curva-Triangulus, and it bears a striking resemblance to Bridget Riley's Tremor. It's obvious that it's a style copy of the same thing. As a musical metaphor, Lamb imagined each triangle as a triad, in the context of the seeming motion of each triangle is related to the musical tuning. But what is the tuning of Curva-Triangulus like? According to Lamb, the harmonic space was configured numerically rather than alphabetically, like all my work from the past 20 years. Curva-Triangulus is an ever-fluctuating modal space, shifting between tertial, 3' quantitative, quintal, 5' quantitative, and septimal, 7' quantitative. Fundamental and branching nodes waver within each elongated phrase. Jumping off from this suggestive quote, I want to dive into some music theory and develop a theory for talking about this kind of ever-fluctuating space. In a recent paper in Music Theory Spectrum, I've developed two metaphors for the movement in just intonation, that of the pitch pun and that of the harmonic volta. And I will briefly recount what these are before turning some attention to some technical examples of these in analytical action, and then finally turn back to Laurence music. So starting with what the harmonic volta is, the spark notes to my article are that a harmonic volta appears whenever there's a connection between two pitches that falls just outside of what one would call a typical interval. So that is, a harmonic volta takes place where there's a relatively straightforward interval inflected by a small comma, greatly increasing the interval's numerical complexity, while altering its magnitude by only a small amount. So there's a small change, but the numerical complexity becomes much more pronounced. The most basic example of a harmonic volta can be found in comma point progressions. So take, for example, the harmonic progression shown on the board. In just intonation, the interval between A and D cannot be a 3 to 2 without causing a slippage of the entire progression by a syntonic comma. Therefore, A to D are related to one another by a fifth lessened by one syntonic comma, or 40 to 27. We can understand a start and end function coming before and after this interval. We have lots of simple relationships here, we have lots of simple relationships here, and then we have a more complex relationship in between the two. When analysing just intonation music, particularly Ben Johnston, I use a particular notational method for showing these more complex intervals in the context of more simple intervals. So here, this is a reduction of part of Ben Johnston's 7th string quartet, the last movement. The complexity versus normalcy of the intervals is really quite obvious. But, if we take the intervals between the bass, we have relatively normal intervals, and then this mad thing, 4,096 to 3,645. A very simple interval, of course, but this is actually a 9/8 tone that is narrowed by a schisma. It should be noted in my article I make an error where I say it's a 9/8 tone widened by a schisma, and that's incorrect. I've made a mistake. But it's a 9/8 tone narrowed by a schisma, and the point is that the harmonic volta remains the same. There's some kind of complex interval that's a small amount different from a much more simple interval within the context of a wider structure of relatively simple intervals. That's what I call a harmonic volta. A pitch pun is a different way of viewing much the same kind of situation. With a pun, one emphasises the functional equivalence of the unusual interval and the simple one that it replaces. So, take for example the analysis on this part of the reduction in the score, and underneath the reduction I've tabulated there's two rather complex intervals, and then I say what simple interval they replace, and then I say the difference in sense between those two intervals. And I call this the drift of the progression. So you could imagine if this progression had followed through, so it would go 13 to 12, but then had gone 5 to 4, 4 to 3, etc., we wouldn't have ended up anywhere differently than I've ended up tabulating. So you say we've lost a little portion of pitch space, we've lost another little portion of pitch space, and overall, as the progression unfolds, we feel like we're drifting away from home. And this is, to be honest, more an effect in feeling than it is an effect in precise tabulation. I don't think anybody, including the unbelievably good listeners in this room, are capable of holding in their head that 6.88 cents has been lost from an interval. But over the course of long progression, we can get a sense that we're drifting away from where we were kind of meant to be. That's in inverted commas, that's not, we're not literally meant to be there, but there's a sense that we're drifting off from the tonal center. In this final example, which we're actually going to hear, you'll be pleased to hear, this is the last measures of Ben Johnston's 7th string quartet, and what I've done is I've tabulated a volta reading. These are the voltas that I've analysed and the drift, and then I tabulate them together, and then in the article I make an argument about how they're slightly different from one another. It's very angels on the head of a king kind of relationship. But what you're going to hear when we listen to this now is a series of quite complex relationships in the bass, leading towards a big C major harmony with a little bit of spice that sounds like a big clarification of what's coming up. So let's listen. Spectacularly wonderful way to end any composition. What I hope to model with my volta and harmonic pun reading is how there's a build-up of more and more complex intervals towards the end when he's going to kind of like by fear end it on a C major harmony. But you hear this kind of progression of very complicated intervals that it turns out are always related to other intervals by very, very small amounts. Very simple intervals, and then there's a very complicated interval just next door. And to be sure, this is luxuriant just intonation music that reaches a height of complexity that's almost beyond comprehension and experience. But there's a parallel that I wish to draw with this kind of analytical endeavour to Lamb's Curva Triangulus, and that's the volta reading of harmonic intervals. In Curva Triangulus, the music sensuously shifts between different formulations of diatonic collections. Take, for example, the first part of the composition. So the composition is arranged into numbers, and it moves through these as if it's moving through kind of rooms across the composition with a feeling that we're cycling through the same material again and again and again. As you can see, there's a continuo part to this music. That's the Barberini triple harp. And it starts with a diatonic collection. It's very, very small, but it's an E-flat scenario diatonic collection. And then it moves through to another diatonic collection by the time we reach here, which is now a septimal diatonic collection. But we could think of that structural aspect as the last thing we talk about with this composition. We say we hear a 5/3 scenario diatonic here, we hear another scenario diatonic shifted down by a septimal comma, and that's the end of the story. But there's other stuff going on, such as around just before that part, we hear some septimal sounds overlapping between the two diatonics. So we don't just have a scenario diatonic and another scenario diatonic, with a scenario diatonic, a bit of bleeding over between the two, and then the other scenario diatonic, which I've tried to model with this notation here. And this says, this is to do with the triadic sonority that's implied by the scenario diatonics at each point. So this D major triad, D down major triad, D down minor triad comes from the first diatonic collection that I pointed out. And then this comes from the second diatonic collection that I pointed out. And this is a slippage between the two. So we start off with A and D being held over into this triad where the septimal interval rises, and then the A and the D slip down further. What I'm going to do now is we're going to listen to the music, and I'm going to highlight which collection is being represented by the diatonic at any one point. I could have done this by having the whole diatonic written out, but I would have thought it would be more confusing orally. So let me just do that for you. So it's the first scenario being sounded now. represented is the two Pythagorean minor triads are representing the two diatonics that we're moving between, and the septimal minor triad is the slippage between one to the other. It's a representation, it's not literal of the score, obviously. But I would call what comes in the middle a volta harmony. It's an unalike thing that stands between two alike things. It affects the shift from one place to another. And to be sure, while I'm going to call it a volta harmony, there's a very fundamental difference between what this is and what I described as a volta interval before. And that is, first and foremost, the septimal harmony is orally more simple than the Pythagorean minor triads that surround it. It arrives earlier in the harmonic series. I think it sounds more luxuriantly warm and simple from an oral perspective. And it involves consecutive numbers in the harmonic series as well. So it's, I think, much more nearly consecutive numbers in the harmonic series. So I think it's a simpler interval. But what is important is that it sounds different to what comes before and what comes afterwards. It affects a shift of perspective, and it does so through a comma interval, and it happens to be synonymous. The comma interval happens to be synonymous with the comma that we get in the notation, this 7 down, which is a 64 to 63 interval. We'll move on to this. What is particularly striking about Lamb's musical language in Curva Triangulus is the way that these shifts are mostly undone or move between relatively simple sonorities. We move from one diatonic space to another, experience the shift, but ultimately we are relatively rooted around just a few diatonic collections across the entire work. And that's a meta analysis of the work, that we hear something quite similar happening the whole way. I can't play you the whole piece, it's about 40 minutes long, but this is something I've heard in listening. I want to point out a few more harmonic shifts that we hear in the music, and then I want to talk about her modal writing more generally when we get to the energetic high point of the work. And after that, I'll go back to talking about the historical relationship of Lamb's music to the past and to the current present. Take number 7 from Curva. It displays a similar sliding effect that we found in the volta harmony that I analysed earlier. And here, we start off with a syntonic scenario on B flat. Is first treated as a mode until we reach the next diatonic collection, B flat down 7. That's this septimal diatonic collection there. And passing between the two, we hear a B flat diatonic, Pythagorean diatonic. There's a binding between these two, these three diatonic collections, which is the C to the F fourth, which appears in all three. What we hear is a shift between one kind of diatonic collection to another diatonic collection to a further diatonic collection. But what idea can we take of that, of a volta reading? The problem, compared to what I said earlier, is that we don't move between similar things, we move between different things. And I wanted to include this example because it shows that Lamb doesn't just do this volta harmony thing that I said. I could bring up more examples of that, but I think this shows that she has other perspectives to bring to writing harmony and just intonation music. Importantly, these collections are exactly those that correspond to the different sound worlds that Lamb talks about. You have the tertial or Pythagorean diatonic, you have the quintal or the scenario diatonic, and you have the septimal or the septimal diatonic, as I'm calling it. So let's take a listen to this progression of diatonics, and I'm going to highlight which diatonic is active at any one moment. So you should be able to hopefully hear it. That's number 7. So I want to finish talking about Lamb's music by talking a little bit about her modal writing more generally, and by way of the energetic high point of the piece, number 16, which thankfully I bought a score for. Here we first hear a spectral collection, which is 2/5, G down, D down, A down, and it introduces a powerful modal progression that I've analysed as being on D down. We hear within this framework many triadic qualities. For example, we hear just intonation major triads on E flat and F, but we also hear such interesting moments as the tritone above E flat, and then the same tritone above D. The writing is definitely not in any way common practice. The treatment of that dissonance is different to what we would hear in a kind of common practice framework. We then hear seventh harmony. It shifted everything around. I'm sorry. This is all meant to be over here, but because it's keynote, this is why it looks insane. It's not insane, I promise. We hear a sixth harmony here. This would be a sixth, and then we hear finally at the end an E flat harmony overlaid with a D harmony, which returns us to this spectral collection, which we can hear is being generated by E flat, but also includes D within it. So take a listen to this passage, and I think it really shows there's a powerfully modal characteristic to Lamb's writing. Say Johnston's 7th string quartet, we're left with the impression that the pitch pun isn't really a category to be discussed. There's nothing, I've not found anything in looking through this music where it seems like we're drifting uncontrollably away from a tonal centre. We instead hear shifts, and we hear bleeding overs with common tone relationships, and then changing qualities around common tone relationships. I want to finish by pointing toward two historical aspects of Curva: the relationship to Renaissance music and the relationship I view it has to the New Simplicity. I think there's a fair comparison to be made between the Curva and works for viol consort from the Reformation period. Take as an example of the viol consort John Dowland's Lacrimé or Seven Tears. This work moves repeatedly through the same materials across 7 instantiations, a little bit like we move through different numbers in the Curva. I also want to point out the continuo phantasm recording that I'm going to show you. It sounds rather similar to the continuo part we heard in the triple harp in the Curva Triangulus. Let's listen to a short clip of the Lacrimé and try and focus a little bit on how it's similar to Lamb's Curva. To the end there because of that little continuo link, and that's so similar to the Curva in my opinion. I also want to draw a comparison between Lamb's music and the New Simplicity. While the tonal effects that I describe in Lamb's music are rather complex, and I think there's something still to be said between the relationship between Curva and the kind of fluctuations you hear in works by like Jörg Frey. I'm also struck in this music by the feeling of motion without motion. And for much, although not all of the curva, I'm struck by something rather similar. There's oscillation, fluctuation between spaces, and blending of rather straightforward harmonies that creates the impression of motion. But when you take a larger, bigger picture look, the music remains rather stationary after all. Of course, the diatonic moment I showed, the modal moment I showed earlier, wouldn't fit into a Jörg Frey composition at all. But let's listen to some Frey from Longing Landscapes, which is 2022 to 23, and again think about how this is similar to the curva from a completely different perspective.
Laurence, excuse me, and then we go to questions, please. Thank you.
But we can skip this. I just want to say.
No.
No, we can skip the music. It's okay.
No. 1 minute, please. Yeah, we are.
Of what I'm trying to say with the connection between those two compositions. Should we just turn it straight over to questions then? We're a bit late. Yeah. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurence, for your most interesting lecture and your brilliant analysis. Really was. And I think there are questions. It was thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. What's the meaning of the word volta? Because
volta, where I'm taking it from is it's an Italian term for a turn in a sonnet, where you're in one kind of like meaning world in the start of the sonnet, and then you switch suddenly to some other meaning. So, for example, in a Petrarchan sonnet, the one I referenced in my article, he's talking about how much Petrarch's talking about how much he loves Laura and she's so wonderful, and then it suddenly shifts to, she's really horrible to me though, you know, and that's the volta moment. It happens at the sextet, and it's just a sudden shift from one affective world to another affective world.
Yeah, and another part would be like, I know that maybe it's because I didn't understood you correctly because you were talking about it, but what are the exact differences between harmonic volta, your harmonic pan, and harmonic pump? Because and I mean, and I'm more going towards Benedetti examples, right? Where he has also like similar or identical music which is getting pumped by JI, by commas, and here in this case it's because how you showed us the D minor six chords, six chords, that you can really see that the septimal comma is doing the drift.
Yeah.
So should I think about more toward Benedetti or towards some or what is the shading between these three terms? Because it's very interesting.
A pump is something that produces a change over the course of the progression. So that the classic example is a drift by a syntonic comma, like you said from Benedetti. A pun is when you don't allow that change to happen, but you have like drifting going on for other reasons. So it's not the progression kind of chucking out changes. I mean, it is in some meta way, but it's the sense of moving slightly from where you were intended to be, which is where they have some similarity, the pun and a pun. But the point of a pun is that the interval that you hear affecting the change has a functional equivalence with another interval that it's replacing. So my emphasis when talking about a pitched pun is the functional equivalence of two intervals. And then a volta is affecting a change in tonal orientation. So I explain it in my article as a shift from one tonal world to another, and I use tonets to like,
Tonets.
yeah, I use that as an example of, you know, if you go a schisma, you go an enormous range of fifths from one place to another, but of course that's only 2 cents, so it's a very, very small little relationship. But I think you're kind of right, like a pump and a pun have a lot in common with one another. Well, I think that the thing with a pump is that you keep the simple interval all the time. You make the simple interval happen all the time, and that creates the drift. Whereas, as you saw in the pitch puns, you were using really, really complicated intervals that were not quite doing what you were expected, and therefore there was a different type of drift. It's like a mirror image of a pun.
But would it be that this complex interval would be kind of approximated as a simpler interval, and by doing this, because of course tuning very complex intervals, especially in this kind of context, is very, very difficult.
Yes.
And also due to the nature how we tend to naturally tune to easier intervals. Would this be...
There's an attraction to the easy interval,
yeah.
right? So I end my article by talking about us having a kind of inbuilt enharmonicism. We can't help, but we because we can't differentiate at the most extreme levels of complexity, that we have this kind of sense that there is a wraparound, perceptual wraparound, but of course just intonation is completely infinite, as I'm sure you know. But there must be, at some level, my ears can't cope anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, at the very highest levels, there's a quantum fluctuations would have a problem. Right? You're talking like these huge numbers.
Yes, yes.
So let's keep talking about it.
That's it. It's impossible to understand this for our ears, as I told you 2 years ago. Physiological
There's limits.
basic isn't able to do
Yeah.
that.
The other thing I would say is that Johnston's music is really unusual in this regard. It's so complicated. I think the performance is incredibly convincing, but there is a thickness to your finger, right?
Yeah.
And they can't avoid that. So I think it's convincing, but it's not the same as a MIDI realization. Well, even a MIDI realization couldn't do it, right? Because there's a granularity to MIDI. Is that broadly correct? So it can't be the ideal performance ever of that particular work. Whereas the Lamb, the relationships are so much more simple. I think that you can have a very, very, very good attempt at creating the intervals that are in the Lamb. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? No? So, shall we have a short break or shall we continue?
We continue. Yes, maybe 5 minutes break only for the setting of Ángel Blanco. Thank you very much, Laurence. Congratulations.
Presentation of this afternoon by Ángel Blanco, his lecture, World Premiere Recordings of Microintervallic Classics. And Ángel Blanco was born in Monterrey, Mexico. He graduated with a Bachelor of Art degrees with honors in music from Bishop's University and has pre-graduate degrees from the prestigious McGill University in Canada. He's a guitarist and promoter of virtuosic performance techniques. And even he made incursions into electronics and vocal percussive experimentation. Likewise, part of his career had taken him to the field of independent musical research, highlighting his interest in the rescue and revelation of indigenous music and instruments of the America before Columbus, and theoretical work such as Sonido 13 by Julián Carrillo and Sistema Natural de la Música by Augusto Navarro. yesterday heard something about him, as well as a collaboration with various composers for the creation of new works. He has performed in important forums and universities in North America, Russia, and Europe, and in the Caribbean. He has received several grants from Mexico and Canada's public institutions. And he's unionized with the American Federation of Musicians of the USA and Canada, and that's very important. It's just possible now. You don't know how long it will be.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dankeschön. I want this to be, it's going to be a little much more relaxed, since I do not consider myself a scholar per se. I wouldn't say anti-academia, because of course not, but my career tends to go like, I want to be more close to the general public. I put it just that way. So anyhow, that being said, I just want to explain a little bit how I became interested with this type of repertoire. Well, first of all, what I'm going to show you here is a book by Augusto Novarro. Besides Agustin, somebody here speak or understand Spanish? Besides Agustin, of course.
Yes.
Just him? No? Yeah. Anyhow, so why I asked that is because this book, you can find it online. Finally, somebody put it online. It's the Augusto Novarro Society. Okay? And the Augusto Novarro Society is actually based in Australia. Yeah, by Craig Grady, a friend of mine. Maybe you already heard of him, right? Craig Grady, he's a fantastic microphone player. So, and he told me, well, you know what, Angel? Well, what you could do is help us out translating this to English. So, for the broader public. And he said, whoops, what happened?
Just touch. No, you need my finger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's me dancing.
Right, that's great. That's great, yeah. That's great.
Sorry.
Okay, so anyhow, so I opened the book in this chapter because this is the chapter that I first read in order to be able to understand what was going on with the music of Novarro. So here I'm going to not exactly translate, but I'm just going to explain. I think it's very straightforward how he divided the so-called octave into 15 pitches. Here we are, okay? And the tuning, afinación means tuning, all of that, and all the equivalents here. And very interesting for me was to see that
Sí, gracias por practicar con segundo.
No, but no, it's good. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Novarra right there. This is the instrument to be used for this music. And believe it or not, it was made in Mexico in the 1920s. But nobody knows where it is. So it is a problem, and I'm pretty sure in every country you have the same situation where sometimes the families of the composers tend to, keep things for themselves in order to, I wouldn't say treasure them, but just like, do not share because, there's a risk of losing it or whatever, And so the Novarro family is kind of like divided. You have the Novarro family that is against sharing, and you have the Novarro family that is pro-sharing. Sadly, the Novarro family is pro-sharing. They don't have the instruments. So it's that fight. So I had to deal with all that. And we're talking about a person who pretty much knew almost nothing of microtones, a few decades ago. That was me. I was just interested in playing contemporary standard, repertoire for the guitar, Leo Brouwer, Ligeti, whatever, all those composers. But the minute, I became interested in microtonality, you have to deal with that. And it's such a niche, it's such difficult, dig into that, especially in Mexico. So I got this book, and finally I contacted a luthier to produce it, and here it is. So I want you to experience it. Do we have guitars here? You're a guitarist, of course, yeah. A question, right? So please do the honors. Please come here. Yeah, because if I just talk like a parrot, you know, nothing changes. I want people to experience Navarro. This. That's the Navarra. And yeah, if you could tell, it has 15 frets per octave right there. So just improvise whatever you feel like. Special sound that it has. Can you tell the difference between a standard? I wouldn't say, of course, the pitches, but the resonance that it has is because the system, how it's made, is a little bit different from the standard guitar. Is the Navarra has its own system that Navarro explains in this book, how to make the Navarra guitar. So the score for the piece that I performed last night, it is actually here. And he's got a bunch of like tablatures and chords where you can use. It's kind of like a manual at the same time, you know, of how to, you know, play his music, which is a fantastic book for that. It's not just theory, but it's a manual. So yeah, a bunch of tablatures here, chords, different chords. And the composition per se, the prelude, is extremely simple. You know, it's not glossy or even composition-wise, not complicated at all. It's just this one, right? But sadly, there wasn't any recording of it. None, zero, zip, nada. And I was like, why not? It's not technically demanding. It's not Paganini, right? So I took my chances and I recorded. I know that it was premiered back in the night between 1930 and 1940, privately in one of the concerts that Augusto Navarro organized in Mexico City. So it was performed in public, but never recorded. So now we have it, and my goal is for everybody to play it. You know, all guitarists in the world, not just me, right? Everybody, and even better guitarists than me. Do it, and write music for this instrument and other Navarro instruments. Because otherwise, things could disappear. For example, if I talk about, with the maestro here, he mentioned about my interest in indigenous pre-Columbian music. We have also different instruments from the Inca, from the Maya, and from the Aztec empires, which are fantastic instruments, microtonal per se, very powerful instruments. And when you analyze those instruments inside, the construction is beyond belief. Have you ever heard of the Aztec death whistle? Never heard? What? The Aztec death whistle.
Yes.
When the war between the Spanish Empire and the Aztec Empire, you know, the two civilizations collapsed, Montezuma, you know, the emperor, army, they used the death whistle to call for battle. And so Cortés, you know, Hernán Cortés, right, the conquistador, he writes down in his letters to Charles King Charles of the Holy Roman Empire, that the soldiers, the Spanish soldiers, they were scared shitless because of the Aztecs. When the death whistles were like using the death whistles, even the horses were like going backwards because of the power of that sound. So it's kind of like, how do you call it? Psychoacoustics? Something like that? Yeah, something like that? Yeah. Is it on a modern term? Yeah. So, and by the way, just to mention this, very important, a lot of people think that the Aztec and the Inca did not cultivate music as we understand it in Europe, and that's a lie. The Aztec had a conservatory. The name is Cuicacali, or was Cuicacali. And yes, it was a profession, and yes, there was court composers, yes, court musicians, and guess what? If you made a mistake in front of Montezuma, death penalty. So that's even rougher than failing the PhD exam, right? Okay. So yeah, that was the penalty. So anyhow, I just don't want to digress. And so the Inca had the houses of knowledge where you could become a professional musician. Anyhow, so more of that later. This is the Navarra. So anybody wants to try it, also take advantage of this one. I think it's the only one in the world for now. Yes.
I don't know how to play the guitar, no?
Just improvise. Feel it as in Dada, right? Dadaism.
So how is the semitone tuned?
This is the tuning, for example, it's supposed to be close to an E, but not the entire scale, in 15 until the other.
So it's 15 EDO?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, this is also weird. How the strings are also...
Yeah, a little bit.
And the strings are tuned this way because of the 15 EDO or because of...
The Navarro tuning, yeah,
Navarro
according
tuning.
to the book.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just...
And this guitar here, this is much more common. It's a quarter-tone. Yeah, everybody knows this one, right? For Carrillo music and Alois Abba. Funny story of this one. Very, very funny story how this actually was a normal guitar. I got it as a normal guitar when I was playing Rodrigo and Villalobos and all that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so what we did with this one is actually the process of what Carrillo called metamorphosis. Julian Carrillo loved that term, metamorphosis. If you study Julian Carrillo, you will see in his books that every single time that he talks about the 13th sound and the process of metamorphosis, and he even has a book, it's a composition manual that is called The Laws of Metamorphosis. Okay, and it is in English. It is a version in English. If not, let me know and I'll send it to you. Okay, it's a very, very interesting book. Very, very interesting. So the process of metamorphosis for the luthier was just to add another fret in between, right? So of course the construction has to be pristine because otherwise the guitar will not support this. So this is a very, very special guitar. It's a very well-made guitar, made in Mexico, by the way. I'm not promoting Mexico. I'm just saying this is the truth, right? And Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey is the famous mountain right there. Yeah, the M. And so yeah, this is the quarter-tone guitar. You want to try it a little bit? Yeah. Look at the sound of this monster.
I love the way you call it a lecture recital, but you don't tell us that everyone else is going to be doing the recital.
By all means, yes.
But do you normally tune this one in standard tuning, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually tuned it differently for the last piece last night.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but you could tune it normally. For example, Carrillo and Abba is sort of like standard tuning.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort of. Why? Because remember that back in the day, Carrillo and ABBA, they were friends actually. They didn't tune in 440. I think the A was 432 in the book of ABBA.
52 maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so ABBA and Carrillo the same. You know. So it's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah.
But the first piece last night was this guitar, right?
Yeah.
In standard tuning.
In standard tune. Yeah, it's standard tune, just a little bit off, like not 440 but 442.
Right. I see.
But it's the same, like technically it's
Right.
the same. And so yeah, it's really powerful instrument as well.
Yeah.
I love it. It's been with me, I don't know, since Jurassic Park, I guess.
Did you have this one built for you?
Yeah, well, yes and no. It's a funny story about this one. I was into this festival of classical guitar back in the 90s. And there was like this luthier who said, "Oh, you know, there will be like, because of the attendance, if you attended to the whole festival as a student, you will be entitled to win a guitar of this luthier who was emerging back in the day." So it was funny because from the ballot, the guy who won was an American guy, but he wasn't there. So he wasn't there to pick up the prize. So technically he lost it. And I said, "Oh, well, let's do it again." Oh, Ángel Blanco. Yeah, so it was me. And then, like I said, I played a lot. It has a lot of attacks, cracks, because it's been. I actually took it to Laurence Stockhausen course once. This one, yeah. And then in 2008, I did it. I have it like metamorphosized to Quarter-Tonal in order to record Carrillo and ABBA and all that stuff. Yeah. So just to show you a little bit of have you all guys seen the music of Carrillo? Have you seen his manuscripts?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Oh, so it's nothing new, right?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna show you the. I love his manuscripts. So let me just find them. Yeah, this is one, for example. Okay, this is the cadenza. Okay, of course, it's a Xerox copy. So it's actually really straightforward. To me, it's extremely easy to understand the system, and personally, I use it a lot. You know, I use it more than the standard notation technique. You know, I'm not saying it's better. What I'm saying is, for me, it works. You know, and so, well, this is, for example, this is a melodic line, and what he's doing right here, you see 32, 28, 88, 76, blah, 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 is because he in this particular piece he divided the octave in 96, so 96 EDO, 16ths of tone. So you have all these pitches, descending line, you know, and then it goes up and down, whatever, until it goes down here. Okay, he lands in 12, which is sort of like in between, almost a D. Okay, it's technically it's a Do 3/4. Okay, yeah. So actually, when I was learning the system, I took yeah, with a blade first, you know, and I carved the numbers here. And the luthier was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, because I don't intend to sell this one. Even after I'm gone, I want people to see it, and this is how Ángel Blanco did it, you know." And yeah, I think it has more value with that, you know. It's interesting to see how I understood Carrillo's music, you know. So yeah, so there's that, and let's see if I can open more pictures. I don't know how to use this properly. More. This is really interesting. This piece has not been recorded. It's something interesting for you guys, perhaps, to do it here. It's a piece for guitar, mandolin, and mandola. Mandola is a bigger one than the mandolin, okay? So it's interesting because he wrote this piece especialmente escrito, so this is like especially written for the group 13 of of Havana City, to be conducted by Maestro Angel Reyes. So really interesting to know that the very first recording of the 13th sound, the very, very first one, was made by Cubans in 1932. Yeah, in New York. And it was the prelude to Columbus. Have you ever heard of that piece? Prelude to Christopher Columbus? No? No, any of you know? So just type Prelude to Columbus by Carrillo and you will get it. You will have, actually in YouTube, there's the original version with Ángel Reyes conducting and the newer versions by different ensembles. No? So there's that. And I wanted to show you also, let's see, let's continue, that's Preludio. Carrillo. By all means, if you want some copies, I could, oh, this is the cadenza. This is funny because I recorded almost all the entire guitar repertoire by Carrillo in 2008, 2009. And then in 2015, I was invited again to the Carrillo archives in Potosi, in central Mexico, sort of like an artistic residence. And I was digging the archives again, you know, because I love his theory and this and that. And I saw this one. La cadencia de guitarra. I was like, what? Nobody knew about this piece. Nobody. And a friend of mine who wrote a thesis about the concertino for guitar and other instruments, he thought, well, maybe this is the cadencia for the guitar and that concertino. But then analyzing and doing all the comparisons, Mario, no, it doesn't fit. So now the question is, cadenza of what? Right? So I recorded it in 2 or 3 years ago, and it's out on different platforms. And yeah, it's for quarter-tone guitar. I could tell right away. And yeah, it's fantastic piece. It's actually much more interesting than the other pieces that you wrote for guitars. This is much more virtuosic and has a flamenco flavor, fast scales and aggressiveness. El duende in Spain. Yeah, all that stuff. So really difficult to perform this. I use the different techniques to be able to more or less play that. Otherwise, it's impossible. You need special techniques. And yeah, that's the cadencia. And if you want a copy or something, by all means, I could provide it. What else we have here? Oh, this is my manuscript, okay, of ABBA. Okay, why? Because this is ABBA original. Let me show it to you. I think it's here. Yes. This is Roberto Bergico, ABBA, and that's the suit. Okay. And believe it or not, I understand more the other system, so I wrote it down so I could play it. That's what I'm telling you. I love the 13 sound system, the notation system, more than the traditional one. Why? I don't know. I'm not that smart, so maybe I'm better with numbers than with notes. So anyhow, so there's that, and that's it. That's kind of like sort of like the explanation of how it goes, how I became involved with this in a nutshell. And if you have questions, comments, yes.
I have a question. If the guitar is in 24 EDO, then how come the numbers go up to 92?
Yes, because Carrillo, when he said, you know what, instead of writing just for quarter tones, which you could, I will use the notation system for 96 EDO for 16ths of tone, so it will be easier for different persons to understand this. That was his approach. It works, sort of, because otherwise, yeah, I mean, you could have it especially just for quarter tones. There's a piece that he actually uses just for quarter tones. But since he mixed a lot in his scores, standard and 12 EDO, 24 EDO, 96 EDO, so he just uses them. Okay, and yeah, so Carrillo is funny because a lot of people think that Carrillo just dig into 96 EDO. Not true. He actually dig a little bit on electronics as well, and harmonic tunings. So it's not just microtonal per se, such as Novato. Novato is more harmonic, right? But yeah, it's just a misconception that we have that Carrillo is just tonal. Yes?
How do you know which octave are you playing? Or the register?
In his system?
Mm-hmm.
Very good question. In a nutshell, let me show you one of these manuscripts right here. So for example,
can you make it a little bit bigger because
Yes, it's my computer. I'll do it. You explain.
yes, okay, in the master. So, okay, thank you. All right, so this is for three instruments, right? So this is the guitar, the mandola, and the mandolin. So, imagine that you have just for the guitar, okay, for the sake of the explanation. This line here, this mi, it belongs to what we call the mi of the fourth space on the traditional treble plan.
middle E, above middle C.
Yeah, exactly. So all that goes down is under, and all goes up is over. Yeah. So I'm very angry with me because I was going to bring you guys a book about the notation system, which I wanted to donate to the university, but I'll do it tomorrow. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, so but you guys can have a copy of it.
So that
And it's in
means
French.
the first instrument of that system, the first 32, that means it's an E higher, octave higher. No,
Here. No?
one system higher.
One system higher. Here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the first instrument, first B.
The first one. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So let's
Yeah.
say that would be E an octave higher.
An octave
from
higher.
C.
Yeah. So for example, if you will play this on the guitar, it will be on the 12th
And
fret.
how would he notate even higher octave?
You use what Carrillo called a hat.
Okay.
So I can use this to write down.
Anything.
Yes. Let's do this.
Can I help you?
Thank you. Whoops, good eye. So, you know, I my letter is as a physician, so I should be a physician, not a musician, right? Sorry for my that. So anyhow, so the equivalence, really quick, one line here. So the equivalence of the 13th sound in a nutshell, there's that. So for example, if you go, let's say that we're dealing with, just for the sake of explanation, on 12 EDO, right? So next do will be here. By the way, if we follow logic, 12 EDO, so it means 0, 1, 2, similar to Milton Babbitt system. And then 0, 1, okay? So 0, and then octave higher, Okay, more, extremely, etc. etc. And so the same applies to the wristband. So you go like this. Technically, there's that. And so yeah, and for example, how to write down chords. Like in this chord, for example, I could tell right now that the third, it's the open string of the guitar. 88 is the second string, and 32 is the fourth string on the fourth fret of the quarter-tone. I could tell because I already know it, right? So what you're going to do is to always write down the highest pitch is the one that you will write down where it goes when you're writing down chords. The other pitches will go down, okay? So for example, equals to this.
So when you carved in the numbers into the guitar, you turned it into a sort of tablature, right? You can see which.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, okay, I see.
Yeah, because actually the system is sort of a tablature, right?
Yeah.
But I love it because the only problem that I have with tablatures is that sadly other instruments or singers cannot understand them, right? Because it's just for other instruments. And this is, whereas this is much more universal, okay? So one of the goals of Carrillo, and this is something that's extremely important, and maybe I was in love with it because of what he said, is that I want people to be able to write down music or to read it as easy as you write down a letter or read the newspaper. That was his goal. Like, he never understood why the complications of formal notation. And believe me, he had some really complicated stuff. Extremely complicated stuff. And so yeah, but I agree with his idea. Because if you tell a kid to write down music, he will do it like this, with this system. And it will take some time to do it with this. Okay? Because you are explaining a kid about sound and then using special symbols to sound, whereas with numbers, if the kid already knows how to count, it will make more sense. Now, again, I'm not saying that this system is better, okay, or everybody should learn now. I don't know. Carrillo will say that. Not me, it's just for me it works. If it worked for me, that's great. But everybody's entitled to their opinion, you know? Yes?
Sorry, can I just ask you really quickly that the first one, the Navarro guitar?
The what?
The Navarro guitar.
Yeah, sure.
15, so that's 15 equal divisions of the octave.
Yes.
So you have major thirds, which are familiar, but the major third is divided into 5.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the tuning of that guitar?
Of this guitar? Yes, so... okay. No, it's okay. Yeah, I know. So, yeah, that one. Well, I could explain to you the Navarro. So the tuning will be... oh, here it is, sorry. More or less, mi, la, re bemol, sol, si, mi. Now it's not perfectly in tune, but so that's the goal. Okay. Okay, sorry, yeah. So yeah.
It's very consonant.
Exactly, yeah.
Major thirds.
So, and it's funny how the two composers, being almost contemporary, they sort of compete with each other. Because we're talking about the 1920s, and we're talking about what happened in Mexico in the 1920s. And a little bit before that, maybe you already know about Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata, right? Famous names, Emiliano Zapata and Pancho Villa. the Mexican revolutionaries, Mexican cowboys, you know. And back in the day, everybody wanted to be part of the revolution. So that's why Carrillo, when the revolution happened and Pancho Villa was around, he said, oh, this is gonna be the revolution of the 13th sound from Mexico to the world. And Augusto Navarro did the same. You know, Augusto Navarro said, oh, the natural system of music is gonna be this system per se of the world. So they all had this mentality of sharing to the world and you know, becoming something really big. You know. But you know, as it happens almost everywhere, right? I will say everybody has an ego. So those two composers had a big ego, in a way, I would say. So yeah, we're not perfect, right? So yeah, there's that. Any other question? Good? Everybody's happy? Yeah? You want to try the guitars more? What?
Yeah, let me go. I want to go to the Navarro.
You want to try the Navarro?
Come on, we go.
Oh, okay, yeah. You want to do that? Or
We
later?
have time to do that. Let's stay here.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you can try it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.